Welcome to Out of Bounds. I'm your host, Stephen Dennis. My guest today is Arya Shams. They are an online political creator, an organizer, and a candidate for New Hampshire state rep. Arya, thank you for joining me today on Out of Bounds. It's great to chat with you.
Thanks so much for having me, Stephen. I really appreciate the time.
So as we've talked about, and as you know, Out of Bounds is a space dedicated to expanding and elevating the discourse in the face of what feels like a shrinking, acceptable field of play, both online and in person. To help us do that, I have each guest kick off each conversation with an opinion, idea, perspective that maybe you've been holding on to that might be viewed as polarizing, controversial, or maybe a bit contrary to or in opposition to the spaces that you typically occupy. And because I think it's good for us to be able to express ourselves freely, and because we live in such an echo chamber these days, I think it's important to hear things that we might disagree with, even if they're from individuals who we would typically tend to ally ourselves with. So without further ado, Arya, what's your out of bounds take for today?
I think my out of bounds take for today would be that the Democratic Party, as built, is actually not a response or an antidote to authoritarianism. It's actually one of its delivery mechanisms. And until we say that out loud, we are only managing the decline of this country and calling it resistance.
Bam. No argument. I think a lot of folks in my audience, based on what I've been sharing in the newsletter since kicking that off, I think they will. You'll get a lot of head nods to that when they hear it. But I know for a lot of folks that we are both in circles with, who are more inclined to be supporters of the Democratic Party as an institution. That is something that they've been hearing a lot of, or a lot more of, over the last year and a half, since Trump was reelected. And, I think that's a solid one, and exactly the kind of, out of bounds conversation that we're trying to promote here. Ari, I didn't want to get too far into the conversation without talking to you about the U.S. and Israel's war with Iran. I want to start there because I know you have a unique perspective on it. There's been obviously a lot of reaction and analysis and talking head commentary about it over the last 100 and plus days. And we're in this state that kind of feels like purgatory, where we don't exactly know the status of the peace deal from day in to day out as it's being negotiated, but hostilities still remain. But could you share a bit with my audience about your unique perspective on this conflict and what it's been like for you to witness?
I would love to. I don't ever mind talking about the situation because it doesn't get enough time at all, and the nuance is completely flattened. So just to give your audience a little bit of a background, I am Iranian American. I'm a first generation American, born to Iranian parents. Both my parents are from Iran. They met here in America in Lowell, Mass. The thing I would want to kind of the core argument I want, and I have a master's in international politics as well, and conflict resolution. I mean, this is my life. The Iran America relationship is really what got me started into politics and sports, which is a conversation I'm sure we'll have.
We'll get to that.
Absolutely. And my I think the core thing that I want your viewers to know is that there are situations all around the world, in America, overseas, wherever, where there are no good guys. And this is a situation in which, unlike a Disney movie, which we like to Disneyfy everything, these are two, or in this case, three authoritarian projects one civilian group population that is being smashed by 3 authoritarian projects. If you wanted to add a second civilian group, it's the American population. So you have the American population who is getting nothing out of this war of Iran, and you have the civilian population in Iran that's getting nothing out of this war in Iran. This is 3 bad guys colluding with each other
Mm.
in the Middle East. Now, what do I mean by colluding with each other? Both these regimes, whether it's the American, and I say both. For this example, let's say Netanyahu and the Trump regime is one
Sure.
piece.
I don't
in
think
this
you would get
puzzle.
many arguments from most people,
Right.
themselves including. Even though I know Netanyahu has argued a lot over his sovereignty as of late.
Sure. Yeah. Netanyahu. Yeah. I saw an article recently too about like not wanting American welfare anymore. Yeah. Good luck with that, Israel.
Right.
I think the big, so if you consider this one group and then you take the IRGC, which is where I'm going to use that a lot, IRGC,
Mhm.
which means the Islamic Republic, the government that runs the
Yeah.
Islamic Republic, the umbrella government. Both of these are authoritarian, and what they do is they use each other to crack down on their own citizens constantly, consistently. So as someone who is stuck in the middle, right? Because if you just watch the media, it's easy to just take a side. You want to take
Mhm.
maybe the IRGC side because they are providing the only kind of open resistance to an apartheid regime. So as someone who is American who doesn't have much information on the area, you're like, you know what? These guys are fighting the baddies. So they must
Mhm.
be the good guys, right?
Yeah.
And that's a natural thing to feel when you're looking at this situation. And I think what I want people to take away from this is that every time America decides to drop a bomb on Iran, that does more for the propaganda capability of the Iranian government than any sanction, than any speech, than any action
Mhm.
the Iranian government could take for itself. Because for 60 years now, 50 years now, they've been saying America's coming. America's coming. They're
Mhm.
coming. They're going to be here any day now. They're coming. And then every administration before this one was intelligent enough to not give that regime what they wanted. But
Mhm.
now the stars have aligned in America where you have anti-intellectualism, you have warmongering, you have every type of terrible characteristic that America has had over the
Mhm.
past whatever amount of years bubbling up to the top. And these guys gave them exactly what they wanted because they don't care. They ultimately do not. No one is interested in regime change. That's
Mhm.
the last thing I want to, I've been talking for a while here. The thing that I would want people to take away from this is no one is interested in the IRGC being removed. Not the IRGC, not the American government, not the Israeli government, because without the Iranian government, there is no more boogeyman for the Zionists. There is no more boogeyman for the Western forces to say, you know
Mhm.
what? These guys are the ones throwing people off buildings, gay people off buildings, whatever the propaganda is at the time.
Right.
So it's nuanced, it's complicated. And what we do when we flatten the nuance is that we just aid these ruling class regimes and we flatten the civilians, which are the only good guys in this situation. It's the civilians in Iran and the civilians in America. So,
And I think the part when obviously when you're able to once or if you're able to get past the carnage that's been levied, um as someone who was a history buff or kind of nerded out on geopolitics, it has been fascinating to see, you know as a result of the last 3+ months, um it is essentially made that authoritarian regime in Iran stronger and in a more dominant position on the global stage. I am certainly someone usually one of the first people to criticize the United States, especially our foreign policy. Um, but it's been, probably a baked in bit of American superiority complex where, you know, I haven't seen the United States get their ass handed to them like this in my lifetime, really. And just whether it was exposing uh weaknesses when it comes to, okay, well, we have this several $1 million drone that's getting hit by drones that cost $50,000. um Whether it was the shutting down of the Strait of Hormuz and being kind of bringing part of the global economy to its knees. It feels like when you zoom out of the region that this has been, and who knows again how long this goes on for, and it feels like it's going to be an ebb and flow thing that could continue, especially with Israel's refusal to go along with Trump's wishes on a peace deal. But it feels like we're witnessing a realignment of kind of global power, where you have European allies saying, rebuffing the United States threats of like a ground invasion and saying, hey, if you do that, we have no part in that, which again just historically seems like a kind of landmark occasion. And so I'm curious to hear how you think about it on a broader, more global scale.
I mean, I think, if we're going to just be straightforward here, we undressed ourselves in a
Hmm.
way that, in a matter of, like you said, 100 days, in a way where we can never take that power projection back, for better or for worse. I mean, a lot of us are happy about that, because it's really easy. And again, touching on this nuclear issue, which is what they always go back to, the nuclear bomb, right? That we can't let Iran have nukes, even though America's got nukes, Israel's got nukes,
Hmm.
Saudi Arabia is getting close to getting nukes using American technology. The same Saudi Arabia that there's an actual money trail going into 9/11 from their
Sure.
government.
Right.
We're giving them the power. And so this should tell people that, and I want people to understand this. And if they watch Hassan Piker, maybe they've heard this before. It is a great thing to keep in mind. Nuclear bombs are not for dropping. Okay, we've seen what nuclear bombs do when we drop them. No one wants to drop a nuclear bomb, even with the hints and kind of the rumors you heard between the Trump government and the Israeli government possibly thinking about dropping a tactic. There is no such thing as a tactical nuclear bomb. All these
Sure.
things are going to destroy everything. So, nuclear, all you've done all you've done in these 40 or 50 years is prove to the government of Iran that they need a nuke.
Mm.
Like, that is all you've done, because North Korea is sitting up there chilling. North
Right.
Korea is, we don't hear from North Korea. We don't dare come close to North Korea. They keep shooting their missiles. We don't hear a peep. It's because they have their nuke. What happened to Ukraine after they got rid of their nuclear weapons, right?
Mhm.
Nukes are used for deterrence, and it's becoming, and it's not just becoming obvious to Iran, right? The world is looking at this situation and being like, well, if we don't have nukes, we better start getting nukes
Right.
ASAP. Now,
Same thing
the part,
after Venezuela as well. Like that was another
100%,
another
100.
example of like, okay, if you're in the Western Hemisphere and you have maybe a more China friendly relationship, and you could very soon enough on a dime become the ire of the United States, do these actions in Venezuela and Iran, um, give more incentive to prioritizing that. It feels like the answer is pretty clear.
Absolutely. And there are two other pieces of this that I would want to just have your audience know,
Yeah, go for
especially
it.
because I know your audience is very intelligent, and it's just hard. There's so much news out there. It's
Mhm.
hard. It's nuanced. It's complicated. A lot of people don't know about the real history of Iran. And if you really want to figure out if you want to go to the beginning of the relationship of Iran and America, when this started breaking down, it was in the early 50s when I say we, but the Iranians, they elected their first democratically elected prime minister, the first one in Iran's history. And he was massively popular. He was a populist. He was the Bernie Sanders of Iran. He ended up being Time Man of the Year. And he decided, I want to nationalize Iran's oil fields.
Right.
Much like a lot of Scandinavian countries do. Right now, if you're a citizen of Norway, you get like 300 grand over your lifetime from the oil deposits Norway owns. That means that oil belongs to Norway. When people say, oh, the oil belongs to America, no, it belongs to Shell, it belongs to Exxon. It does. We don't see any of that money. And Mossadegh, he wanted to nationalize the oil fields, which we had a sweetheart deal with British Petroleum in England.
It was a clear threat to the bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the coup. There was a coup. It was called Operation Ajax. It is not a conspiracy. The CIA has admitted to it. Basically, they sent like 5 guys in there with a couple of $1 million, and they overthrew the democratically elected president of Iran. And you have to understand, if you're Iranian and you see that happen, and they bring back the Shah, who is very unpopular at the time because the Shah is looked at as like a kind of like a symbol of the West, massively unpopular. And we go from a country that is democratic, has women in parliament, is secular, to wanting something completely opposite from the people that just screwed your country over, which is a natural thing. So what did they do to this? They decided to go to the complete opposite of secularism. We're just going to want to do anything that's opposite. And they let in something much worse. And the last part of that is, we as Americans don't know the history of all these different areas. And for us, it's like, okay, we have a problem with this country. We do a quick headline look at Wikipedia, what this country is about. But people don't understand. When you see those Lego videos, the Iranian Lego videos that are, the Iranians have been studying you for 100 years.
Right.
They've been studying you in Iraq, in Libya, in Afghanistan. They've been watching the disconnect between the military and the American population. They know we're tired. They know we're divided. They know we're fighting. They know everything there is to know about you and your pop culture and what makes you happy and how you're addicted to media. And that's why those Lego videos are so good. That's why every American who watches those is like, my Lord, like the music is good. They agree with most of the messaging in there. It's insane.
The culture of the internet
they
in the
know
United
you
States.
better than Trump knows you. By the way, I just want to make that part clear. They know you better than this regime, the Trump regime, would ever know you. They know nothing about you. Trump's never set foot in a grocery store. He's never pumped his own gas.
Right.
He don't know anything about you. The Iranian government knows everything about you and your tendencies.
And I even remember seeing, that in Iran, the wall of U.S. atrocities, and it had the dropping of the atomic bomb. It had the response to 9/11. It had and then the last thing on there was basically a reference to the president and his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and Epstein Island. So I mean, they're tapped in, and it's just been, again, if the end goal, from a United States perspective, was to dehabilitate this country and region, I mean, it couldn't have been more of a failure, because now not only the regime didn't change, they're in a much stronger economic
strongest
position
they've ever been
than they were. You're right, stronger than they've ever been, and they just took on the most powerful military on the planet, with drastically lopsided resources and was able to, fend them off without boots on the ground invasion and other allies not wanting to get involved. So
And I want to be very real with your audience here that, like, while I am anti-Israel, anti-Trump government,
mhm,
anti-imperialism,
yeah.
anti-IRGC, it's still impossible for me not to feel a little bit of Iranian pride over this. And this is what all Iranians are struggling with right now. Like, my
Mhm,
family is the perfect example of the non-monolith nature of the Iranian diaspora. I have both my parents are alive still. There's my sister. My sister and I are rabidly anti-IRGC and anti-Zionist and
mhm,
anti-imperialism. My mom is a pro-monarchist, so pro-Shah,
yeah.
and was pro-Shah until she started seeing Israeli flags at some of the rallies. And
Mhm,
that turned her off from it. Same with my dad. My dad was like, you know what, maybe the Shah isn't such a bad idea. And then sees some of these Israeli flags and is like, that's called poisoning the well, obviously. It's a great way to break the diaspora. But I want I want everyone to know really that, like, how complicated this is for all of us. For someone who is so about, I'm all about justice. It's almost like an OCD part of my
right.
characteristic, my personality. Like, I'm obsessed with justice. And what is justice? I mean, what's a definition of justice when it comes to this conflict?
Mhm,
Is it Iran defending itself against two of the greatest threats that this world has ever seen, while simultaneously, mind you, getting whacked over the head in America by the American government? Their Iranian national team
mhm,
is America playing soccer, is being completely abused by the American government. And it's just, at that point, all you're doing is making it impossible for people not to root for Iran. And now
right.
the people who have been fighting the government, they have to deal with that now. They have to deal with the greater American public that is just learning about this and is realizing, well, maybe the Iranian government is the good guys and the Zionists are the bad guys. They look at people like me as possibly a Zionist now because I'm
Mhm,
anti-IRGC. And who's the only one fighting the Zionists? It's the IRGC. So this is
y
how, again, sometimes it's by design, right? When they bring those flags into the Iranian diaspora, like
mhm,
rallies, that's a poison pill. You know, like,
right.
you hear the example all the time. Like, there's one Nazi in a group. If there's one Nazi holding a flag and 100 people marching, you have 100 Nazis. I mean, that's just how it is, you know?
Yeah.
So it's human nature and very nuanced, very nuanced.
I mean, there's not only there's the hard tactical war that the United States has come out on the losing side of, but there's also that soft kind of war, which, you had mentioned the World Cup. I know that you had gone to a couple of games out west, and I believe both were to see Iran play.
Yep.
Um, and just wanted to, obviously, the World Cup is happening right now. There's a game on currently.
Go Egypt.
Um, but I wanted to first, uh, just get your take on your World Cup experience, just as a sports fan, and then kind of connect it to your ability to watch your, original, uh, country play in front of, on the world's biggest stage, and then, talk a little bit more about some of the hurdles and structural challenges that the team had to face while competing.
Absolutely. And the context I want to give people right away is that, on top of being Iranian American and having the master's, my master's thesis was actually on soccer and politics.
Mm,
So when I say
yeah.
Iran and America has really driven my life, the relationship between these two countries, it's not an understatement. And just to tell you the history of this, in 1998, when, to that point, 40 years of no talking between, or sorry, at that point it was 30 years of no talking between Iran and America, right? And then all of a sudden, Iran makes its first World Cup in so long, and they get grouped together into the same group. So they have to
Mm,
play each other after not having conversations for 25, 30 years. to me, so at this point, I'm 16. I'm in the country. I'm in Tehran visiting with my parents. It just happened to work out that way, where they played each other when I was in Iran. And let me tell you, that changed my life. That it taught me that the people of both countries are way kinder and way better than their governments. And I saw it through the teams on the field when the media was like, these teams are gonna, fight on the field. They're going to represent their governments. It was the complete opposite. They're hugging each other. They're kissing each other. This never happens in soccer where they took like 15 minutes before the game to like take pictures and give each other gifts. And it's just, you have to understand, and a lot of people don't look at sports this way, how unifying that is for you, for the other country, for you two together. Iran ends up being invited back 2 years later or a year later to have a friendly in LA. Massive crowd of Iran. It was just a beautiful time. That's what got me started. And I went to the World Cup in Qatar. I got really lucky because Iran and the US were in the same group then too. And got lucky again with Iran playing in LA. And my master's thesis was on soccer stadiums. And I expand on this, but soccer stadiums are the last bastion of freedom of expression.
Okay.
It's the last place where authoritarianism can't script. Now, what do I mean by that? When it was at SoFi that we went to, the games that we went to in
Los
SoFi,
Angeles, right?
Exactly. And right away, we're told we can't bring in flags that aren't the official Iranian flag. Well, good luck trying to stop 70,000 people walking into that stadium with some version of a flag. Now, did they let Israeli flags in? No. I mean, did they let American flags in? No, because that's political when those teams aren't playing. But different versions of the Iranian flag were let in while both the monarchists, right? So the anti-IRGC, pro-Shah monarchists, and the IRGC, both of them are yelling at FIFA, saying, IRGC saying, don't let any other flag but our official Islamic flag in. And the Zionists are saying, don't let the Islamic flag in. You have to let the other flags in. This is who we are. They couldn't stop any of them.
Yeah.
I saw all the flags in there, right? I saw all the flags in there. And I think we all walked in there. As a member of the diaspora, I didn't know what to expect, even though this was like a dream, this coming to my backyard and being able to study,
something
like
you
I wrote about.
Started looking forward to this probably, years before,
Absolutely.
The U.S. and Iran would be in like actual hot conflict with one another.
Absolutely. I mean, perfectly said. And this is the thing that really, when we talk about unmasking moments, and for me, the moment was walking through. So the first game I went to New Zealand versus Iran, and I went to Belgium versus Iran. And New Zealand versus Iran was the first game. So Iranians, even my family, my greater family I was there with, we didn't know what to expect. We didn't know if people were going to boo. We didn't know if people were going to protest or what it was going to look like. When we walked through the outside, there was a group, and if you follow my social media, you'll end up saying there was like a group of 100, 150, 200. Yeah, like rallying against Iran. But once you go into the stadium, none of that existed. And I think there was this, again, I want to paint you guys a picture here, which is, it shows you how much nuance Iranians have inside that stadium, right? When they're in the stadium, the national anthem plays, the entire stadium booed. The entire stadium booed, because that is the Islamic national anthem. That diaspora is unified against the IRGC. We are. I mean, what we want to come next, that's a whole other story, but we are unified against the IRGC.
Yeah.
But once the players are announced, it is just cheering. And then once the goals are scored, it is just like some of the loudest noises. The second goal against New Zealand was one of the loudest pops. And I've been to games, man. I've been to all kinds of games. It was one of the loudest pops I have ever heard in my life. And I think that momentum kept going. It helped the team. It helped the diaspora show more support. And I think the one thing it showed me is how powerful the media is
Mm,
in giving you a narrative, right? I'm there on the ground. The narrative is Iranians are fighting.
mm,
Iranians are fighting. They're fighting outside of the stadium. They're fighting inside of the stadium. And yeah, there were a couple instances where, there's video of people
sure.
getting
That's
into
also
it.
going to happen
Those
at
are the
any
only
sporting event.
instances.
So,
Exactly, exactly. So the only instances it's happening. The real story is how unified the diaspora was inside
mhm.
that stadium, but they'll never say that. They'll never say that on the media. It's up to people like us to show it because that's just meant to control. It's just meant to keep us fighting.
It pulls the
And
house of cards down on,
all
this
the way down.
entire, narrative that's been built. But
And it's
as to
one
what you
thing to
said
talk
before,
about it.
like there's the government and then there's the people, and like the once you give the players and the people that platform, again, that's why I was so glad that the team was able to participate, because I know that there were worries that was quite possibly not gonna happen. Once you give them that platform, even if it is begrudgingly, you allow that kind of truth to come through, whether it's from the players on the field, whether it's and kind of or the messages that they're giving, to the media, or from the fans themselves, and it kind of pierces through the facade that gets pushed.
Absolutely. And it's impossible. I mean, really, like you sh- my whole my whole message while I was out there, which we're seeing some of it now with the American team and the Trump news that came out,
Hmm.
obviously. And this is my entire when I talk about sports and politics,
Yep.
this literally what I'm talking about when I say poisoning the well. I saw it firsthand with the Israeli flags and the American flags mixed in with the Iranian flags. That's what happened when Trump called FIFA. When
Hmm.
Trump puts his paws on this transaction, on this situation, it is now political. It is
Right.
now completely political. Now you are going to force people to root against America.
Yeah.
And it's like I, I don't, I wish Americans would have a little bit more understanding that they are not the center of the world. This
Hmm.
America centric kind of like thought that like we're only going to
Especially
care
in
about
soccer,
soccer.
right? Or
Yeah, exactly.
especially in
Yeah, we're only
soccer. I
going to
mean,
care when we're in
that's
the
the one.
round of 16.
We were, as someone who is not, I'm not dialed into soccer year round like I am other sports, but every World Cup, every Olympics, it's my one opportunity to get patriotic or a bit nationalist, and root for our American teams. And again, it's kind of the rare spot where the Americans were like plucky, you know, overachiever, scrappy, kind of team, and then all of that goodwill goes out the window the second that Trump puts his mitts on it.
And it's just it pretty much makes the result irrelevant.
Mm,
Whether they win or lose, the narrative is going to be the same. They cheated, or they put their hands in it, or they're just corrupt. America's
right.
corrupt, and it's the people who are they don't care. The people who don't care about that don't care about soccer. I mean,
Right.
the people that were arguing for him to do that, most of the time they're spending their the most ironic thing, like the people like Dave Portnoy, for example. I'm sure you know Dave
Yep.
Portnoy
Yeah.
from
Very
Barstool,
familiar.
spending his time being like, listen, if you are against um Flo getting put back onto the field, then we should deport you. While last week, this guy is like supporting eliminating birthright citizenship to
Hmm.
kick him out of the country.
Yeah.
Anyone that doesn't know about Flo Balogun, his mom was Nigerian, denied a flight to her home, and she gave birth on American soil.
Right. And it was
He's
only because of how pregnant she was that they didn't feel it was safe for her
exactly,
to fly, and
exactly.
that's the only reason why he's able to play on the team. I mean, it's full of contradictions and hypocrisy. I mean, again, it was one of those things where, I mean, for me, it it felt like the outcome was what it probably should have been. Again, from a lot of my soccer friends said that It probably shouldn't have been a red card, so this is the outcome that you get to. But and I also think it's a trap for a lot of liberals as well, who aren't soccer fans, who aren't dialed into the World Cup. Like it's not going to look great if you all of a sudden are now like rooting for the US team to lose because Trump got involved. It's just one of those things where, very similar to back after the men's and women's hockey teams won their gold medals,
Perfect example.
where again you have this unifying moment, where all Americans are together, putting politics aside and rooting for this tremendous accomplishment that instantly gets muddied by Kash Patel partying in the locker room and calling Trump and denigrating the women's team. So, and I know he's going to be out there for the final, and I believe he's going to be on the stage handing out the trophy. And it's just again, I am someone I years ago hosted a podcast on the intersection of politics and sports. A lot of my college degree was spent studying that, and so I am usually one preaching the intersection of sports and politics, but as a political act to insert yourself where you don't really need to be. Again, if you want to attend the game and sit in the suite, that's one thing, but to over insert yourself so consistently where again it becomes less about the outcome on the field or on the ice or on the court, and more about you and your being there, so that way he can watch Fox News highlights of himself. It's really disappointing. And as you said, I mean, we're recording this the day after the United States got bounced. Win or lose last night, it was a just no win situation for the United States, and they lost pretty much all the goodwill that they had garnered up to that point.
Absolutely, and those are the real victims, right? The real victims are the U.S. national team, which had to deal with the BS, right? Like, and none of them, let's be real, they're athletes, and that's my story. That was my story in Iran, and I want to give the same story to Americans or not in Iran, but the Iranian team.
Mm-hmm.
That the Iranian team is not their government, right?
Right.
And it's important. It's important we know that too about the U.S. national team and why they were how they were put into just this terrible situation. Like, I'm sure Flo Balogun didn't even want his red card like unsuspended. I'm sure it was a nightmare for him dealing with like being completely out of his mind, dealing with the media, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when they don't, like you said, they don't care about the result, or they want the result no matter what, not caring about the process. And I think it's important to remember the whiplash of that intersection of sports and politics. And when you talk about like that intersection is good and bad,
Yep.
right? And I think like throughout history, the main part of my thesis, I was actually in the former Yugoslavia in the Balkans, and what I wrote about was the Balkans War and how the first act of war was two soccer teams on the pitch fist fighting each other, and then with the fans. And that's an example of how things can completely fall apart in sports. Again, last bastion of freedom of expression, and using these bastions for good, using them to know that sports can strip away the mediated narrative, sports can strip away the press and the government's version of anything, that it unifies ultimately if we allow it to unify. And just as someone who is Iranian American in
Mm-hmm.
that stadium, I want people to just have a little bit of context, like a little bit of awareness, where I'm in a stadium in LA where it's mostly Iranian fans that are anti-Iranian government, and simultaneously America is dropping bombs on Iran while they're playing. That happened against Belgium. Imagine you're an Iranian player, you have, your parents are home in Iran, possibly getting bombed by the
Mm-hmm.
country, the host country that you're playing in, that it won't even give you visas. There's something so surreal about that image that is really hard, like we'll never understand as
It
Americans, hopefully, walking outside and seeing a bomb drop on your neighbor's house.
it's really unprecedented. I think I read, and again, feel free to fact check me, but I think this was the first time in World Cup history that um, a
That
host
the host country was bombing one of
country
the
hosted a team that it was currently at war with. Again, I mean,
absolutely.
it throughout all the history that we have, it always surprises me when we run into something that is still unprecedented. And unfortunately, it's not often, skewed in a positive manner. It's not an unprecedented positive thing. But I was glad that they were able to play. I feel like they, showed themselves with dignity, the Iranian team, and despite all of the hurdles and circumstances that were thrown at them. And as we talked about a couple times here, I think that kind of earned goodwill and empathy only aids to their cause and their legitimacy in their own fight against their authoritarian government, but also kind of driving a wedge between the actions of the United States with Iran and the will of the people here in the United States. So, uh,
Absolutely. We're very the last thing I'll say, we're very proud of the team. I was born in America, but
mhm.
Iran's one of my teams, man. Like my parents are Iranian. What am I gonna do? These are teams that I root for, and
Yep.
I think they made a lot of the world like soccer fans proud too. And I'm very happy about that. They really showed themselves with a lot of respect and a lot of poise. So
Yeah. And there's nothing controversial about that. The fact that someone American born with parents from another country rooting for that country. It happens, with my, people I know who were born, whose parents are from Italy. Like it's not,
sure.
just because we happen to be, just because said country happens to be on the United States, enemy list at a certain time, doesn't make it any more controversial. So, I wanted to pivot to kind of where you're at um, politically. So, we've met for the first time at in person at a protest of an ICE detention center, or plans for there to be an ICE detention center warehouse converted. And again, I met you through online spaces. We'll talk about New Hampshire Talk and get your opinion on kind of what it is in a second. But um, the thing that stood out to me, and again, we talked about it before we started, your combative, adversarial, loud uh, online presence. And I'm curious what you make of my description of that, and kind of what your thought process is. And I'm sure you get a lot of backlash both from the right wingers who you're kind of going back and forth with, but also the more establishment liberal and moderate types.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't think I have a problem with the way you described it. I mean, maybe the adversarial, I would just adjust a little bit. I think a lot of people view it as adversarial, and I
Mhm.
have no problem with that because
and
I,
and
I
I
mean,
and I should say I don't levy that as derogatory. I think adversarial is good,
sure,
and I think we need more of it.
I completely agree. I completely agree, and I think what I try to bring to these conversations online, because to me, one of the biggest critiques I get is you're not doing anything on the internet, right? And maybe at a certain point that was right. Maybe
Mhm.
at a certain point when I was just a Twitter troll and didn't really wasn't organizing, wasn't meeting you at
Yeah.
events, that was true. But I started there. That's where I started. And now I'm running for office, and now I'm part of a big organizing group, and now like I have friends that I call every day and we show up places. I still do the talking online. It's very important because we are in a war. We're in an informational war. And one of the battle lines in this war is the internet, the social media. You have so much money and so much narrative being pushed here that we have spent a lifetime letting these people take up space in these places. So if you go on a Twitter right now, it's all right wingers because the left
Right.
wingers left, right? We should have stayed. We should have stayed and
Mhm.
battled for that space, because that's what they did. They came and they battled for that space and they took it. And for me, I don't think like I think there's a lot of you could really put a lot of themes into this description, like whether you're talking about the patriarchy, whether you're talking about misogyny, all of that stuff. All of that stuff, it thrives in areas we leave. It
Sure.
thrives in areas we ignore, and that we say, you know what, or we let them just we tolerate their intolerance,
It's a
right?
bad mold, you know, if you're not tending to it and you're just
Absolutely.
ignoring it, it doesn't go away.
It's a permission slip,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's if you don't call them out, and I use this example in real life, like through the 2024 election, Donald Trump was out there being like, your Haitian neighbors are eating dogs and cats. You remember him saying that. Do you remember a Democrat ever coming out and being like, what are you talking about? That is the craziest thing I have ever heard.
Mhm.
Craziest thing and you are so weird. Just being real. That's not even being derogatory.
Mhm.
That's weird,
Right.
man.
I mean, they did it for 2 weeks until they got some consulting reports back that said, you know, that might turn off some moderate on the fence voters, and then you never heard
And it
like,
was
"This
the
is weird
best they
again."
did during that election when they were like prancing out Tim Waltz, and he was just prancing around stages being like, Republicans are weird, man. Republicans
Right.
are weird. Yeah.
Right. And I thought it was
And
effective, and then all of a sudden you know, never heard of it. You never heard it again. So, but
it's so
you believe in, you know, that these are spaces that need to be, you know, and ideas that need to be fought over, and pushed back on, and either turning a blind eye to it, or doing it in a passive manner in this environment in 2026 is not going to get the job done.
absolutely. And to a further extent, people want to see that they're not alone in feeling how they feel. I
Mm,
know a lot of people feel how I feel, a ton of people, but they've been bullied into silence. They've been bullied they're scared.
mm.
Why wouldn't they be? It's scary out there. These people are scary. I'm sure you see some of these conversations I
Yeah,
have with
yeah,
people.
yeah.
These people are scary. And I want this is why I'm doing this. This is why I put myself out there. This is why I try to be a lightning rod, because how I view this fight, right? How I view things like masculinity and fighting, I always use the analogy that, like, there's a sword and a shield. Which one are you going to be? I'm a shield. I'm here to put my foot down
Mm,
and to put a shield up for the people that I love, for the people that are unfairly getting attacked, people that can't defend themselves, people who maybe have jobs where they can't defend themselves, maybe, well, whatever, for whatever reason. I
mm,
want them to know that there's someone out there willing to fight unapologetically about the things that they care about with the same kind of passion that our ideological enemies are fighting with. And if you know anything about fascism, and I'm sure you do, that fascism doesn't respond to weakness, doesn't respond to negotiating, doesn't respond to, debates. It responds to strength.
mhm.
That's what fascism responds to. And the moments you can even, like, I'll give you an example in Minnesota. I know there's still like some ICE stuff going on there, but the
Yeah.
moment that surge started ending is when Minnesota residents started showing up armed to these like, these
Mhm.
surges, these ICE surges. All of a sudden,
Right, when
ICE is
you're
not doing
doing it
deportations
in
anymore.
a state where you're allowed to carry, to
Yeah.
conceal carry, it changes the elements, and, you know, and there's not, and you can see it in the, again, the changing attitude of even just the average kind of, you know, the at these protests you've been going to, of either ICE detention centers, police brutality, data centers, you know, you're seeing a lot of average kind of, you know, people that would just go to the voting booth maybe every 4 years, and those folks are looking for a more offensive, you know, kind of put your foot in the ground and push forward instead of constantly being on your heels. You know, kind of gone are the days of uh, former First Lady Michelle Obama's, when they, you know, go low, we go high. You know, low man usually wins, again, to throw another sports term out there. And have you felt, so you had mentioned before that you're um, recently announced that you're running for office. You're running for state rep in New Hampshire. Um, how has that lightning rod combative online um, persona, how has that converted or channeled through your desire to pursue elected office? What was kind of the decision behind taking the work that you're doing online and also in the streets and channeling it through this path?
I want to start with being real that I never planned to run for state rep, or
Hmm.
especially not this early. This
It's great. You're still
I've
so
only been
young. You're too young to be
yeah,
a state rep.
for sure, and I've been I mean, for a year I've been just posting online, right? Or for 8 months or whatever, 9 months, and then I'm just, to me, it's not even about, like, the seat opened up because my rep Laura Tulursky, who's great, is running for state senate now. So her seat opened up, and I was approached by Democrats to take the seat. It's hard in New Hampshire. There's 400 seats.
Yeah.
It's hard to find someone for every single race. But I was approached by Paige Boschman and a couple other people about that seat. And to me, it's like I question this idea. Because 20 years ago, Stephen, I'm not made for a state rep, right? Like
Mhm.
I'm too combative.
Yeah.
I'm too, want to fight or
Right.
whatever people want to think. But I was born for this moment. Like this
Mhm.
is the moment that, like, that
Right.
fight and
Culture and society has shifted in a way where, they're not worried as much, average voters are not necessarily worried as much about, whether or not you're showing up in a suit and tie. They're more
right.
worried about who's going to make sure I can pay my rent at the end of the month.
Right. I mean, it's at the beginning, 20 years ago, it was like how much experience you got. Now
Right.
it's like, well, the more experience you have, the worse it is in
Mhm.
our eyes, because
You
things
look a
are
bit,
broken.
you look like you're out of touch with the average
Exactly.
person.
Exactly. And for me, it was a logical decision, right? There's no heroes. I'm not, this is nothing heroic about this. And like, for me, it was logical, right? The problems are obvious to me, right?
Mhm.
And there's nobody in the room. Um, no one in the room seems to understand or connect. I say nobody hyperbolically. There are a lot of great reps. There
Sure.
are, and I
But the
work with them all the time.
majority or the narrative is, from, again, you've been a voter, you've been involved in these circles as an organizer. The perception is, even though it may not be the reality, perception is reality. That there's a disconnect, both from the right wing, free state movement to the Democrats in office that tend to toe a more moderate and incremental line.
Absolutely, 100%. And when you talk about some of the stats from that state house, 61-year-old average age, oldest legislature in the country, $100 a year, and then you talked about the Free State Project, and just housing for me is the number one thing in New Hampshire. It is for most voters in New Hampshire,
Mhm.
but for me personally, I live in an apartment complex that was just bought by Blackstone. This is not like theoretical for
Mhm.
me anymore. My rent, I'm paying 2,300 for a 2-bedroom, 1 bathroom. The same 2-bedroom, 1 bathroom I moved into in 2020, paying 1,500. Tell me, like, and again, Kelly Ayotte got paid out by BlackRock, right? Like
Mhm.
she was part of the board. To me, the biggest thing is that these three things that I just mentioned, right? The state rep pay, free state project, and affordability of housing. To me, the biggest issue was I couldn't find anyone in the state house that saw how these three things were directly connected.
Mm.
Like directly connected, right? And I wanna push more people that are like me. Okay, so when I say like me, what do I mean by that? I'm 41. Okay, so 20 years under that age. I'm I'm a renter.
Yeah.
Very few amount of renters, and ultimately, I'm not rich. I'm
Hmm.
not. I don't have this accrued wealth. I'm not the spouse of a millionaire, which would be fucking nice.
Yeah.
But I honestly, I have time. I
Hmm.
have time. I don't have a family. I don't have a wife or kids or partner. Um, I've lived a life that has allowed me to travel for work and stuff. And now I happen to have time, and I would spend that time posting online. I want to tell people that like it's really not as hard. They want you to think it's impossible to get
Hmm.
inside of that room. And while I'm not going to be someone, I truly, I agree with Mel, your last guest, that I don't think electoralism 100% is going to fix every problem, but it's one tool. It is
Yeah.
one tool in a big toolbox, maybe not even the most important tool. And I want people to know that like you could be just like me. I work at a family business. I have family members that are willing to help me out in this endeavor.
Hmm.
And this is teamwork. This is not just me. This is a team of people. I have a whole community behind me that is supporting me. Again, that made me feel like I was made to do this and really, and it's not as hard as, you don't have to be all of those things that I mentioned, a millionaire. Like, you just have to have a little bit of time and maybe a fire that can't be put out. And once you see how people are willing to react to you stepping into the arena, that was another like a very it had a lot of momentum behind my decision. Is like when I was talking about it to people, just this kind of like light went off on their face. You
Right.
could see like them light up at the idea, and it's empowering. I don't know how else to
Hmm.
say it. It makes me feel tiny in this world and great, and I want to keep fighting for people because it feels good. It feels good knowing that you have moral clarity, and that's my brand. To just put a bow on my
It's gonna be the
brand,
name of
it's
this
moral.
episode, so it's a good plug.
Yeah, moral clarity, moral conviction. That's who we are. That's who I am. That's why it's very easy for me to say what I think is right, even if it's not popular. I have no problem with it because ultimately I have to go to bed at night.
Hmm.
I'm the person that has to be able to sleep at night. I'm the person that has to be able to wake up and live my life without existential dread and guilt. And I'm not going to live that way because I have for a long period of time. I have
Hmm.
put myself in a box that made it palatable for everyone around me. And I feel like now that I'm myself, people are responding more to that than they
Hmm.
ever responded to the guy that was inside that box.
And to take us to the last question again, you brought up how this decision to run for office, you don't feel like you're doing it alone. You feel empowered by people that you've spoken to, by people that you've organized with, and the supporters that you have at your back. Um, I often feel like um, there are the folks that want oftentimes the folks that want to run for office and who raise their hand for it or jump to the front of the line oftentimes haven't put in the sweat equity in the streets and in the community spaces, um and it can be harder because of that to cultivate that sense of support around it. um Again, we met and first I first became aware of you through this New Hampshire talk space and movement, um, post 2024 election re-election of Trump. um, I'm curious how would you in your own words define the New Hampshire talk space, and I'm curious what you perceive its value is in the political kind of landscape across the state.
Those are great questions, and like, what is New Hampshire talk has been one of the questions of my
Mhm.
life the
Yeah,
past
I'm
year
sure I'm not
because
the first person that's asked you it. So,
yeah, and not that it's a common question, but because it's a hard answer. I'm not
mm,
even quite sure what it is still. I think like a lot of us that we were early on the NH Talk hashtag, even we're still trying to figure out what our long term um, outlook is here. What are we supposed to be doing? And just tell people, my description of New Hampshire Talk would be a decentralized collective
mhm,
of content creators, activists, organizers, politicians, just people that care about their neighbors. New Hampshire Talk started as just the hashtag, and it was even before me. I mean, New Hampshire Talk, that hashtag existed even before I started posting about it. But a collective of us just started with diligence and, you know, with an actual goal is to get people into this kind of funnel, New Hampshire funnel. How do we get people into this New Hampshire funnel? And it was just talking about the things that are important to you, even outside of your apartment. I used to post about things overseas 100% of the time. Now it's a little piece of my content. Now I'm talking about what's happening in Nashville. I'm talking about what's happening in Hudson, the things around me, because that's where the algorithm is hitting, is like very hyper localized. So we started as just the just a hashtag, few people talking. Right. Now there's a massive Discord. There's like
over 700 people.
Yeah, 800 people. There's all kinds of, there's DSA members in there. There's people from all the counties in there. And it is this constantly morphing, probably given too much of a power projection, which I don't want to like kind of, I don't want, it's nice that we have this much power projection. I think it's probably a little bit less than what people think it is in real life. I think people think we do like, I don't know, we have groups that go around doing campaigns, like,
a ton of coordinated efforts.
Yeah,
as you said, I think the word decentralized is a key one, because it's really just individuals finding other individuals.
Yes, most important thing I want people to know, none of us are getting paid. None of us are taking orders from anyone. It's not like there's a few like heads of NH Talk being like, all right, gang, we're doing this. You know, this is what should either give people more hope or scare people more. That most of the stuff that comes out of NH Talk is organic. It's organic. It's just people who have the same views, or not, we're not a monolith, but we have generally the same outlook, affordability, fighting for the working class, fighting for fairness, fighting the patriarchy. Like, you tend to talk about the same stuff.
Right.
So, and that breaks the algorithm. When you have 10 people that are just organically at different times talking about things, all of a sudden it breaks the algorithm. People outside of New Hampshire get to know you. We talk to people in Vermont, people in Maine. And these people were quintessential to me deciding to run. I mean, if they didn't tell me, if like this, you know, handful of them that I'm very close with didn't tell me that that they were supportive of this, that this would be the best place for me to put my effort right now, never in a million years. Because again, like I've never reached for the power. It's never been something that's been in my, I have enough power as a man in this world, and you know, navigating this world is just a man in America, right? A straight man that's white identifying in most places of this country, even though culturally far from that. Right. I've been blessed here, and I want people to know that, like, to me, going for $100, I could be traveling the world right now and making as much money as I want. I don't have anything holding me here, and I want people to want me to run, if that makes sense. I don't want to run. You know, if people think that I would be their best representative, that's an honor. Why would I ever say no to that? But I think there's a massive difference between seeking out that type of power. So I mean, I feel very, I think the thing I would say is I just feel very blessed to find this group. And I want to tell other people outside of New Hampshire is just a laboratory right now. We're a small state. A bunch of us might be big fish in a small pond, because it's not California, right? It's not hard to break the algorithm here. And I'm sure it wouldn't be that hard to break the algorithm in whatever town, city you're in, if you're in a smaller state especially. And just let the people around you know that New Hampshire Talk is a proof of concept here, that if you look at some of these special elections that have happened in New Hampshire too, like money cannot, like consultant donors can't replace excitement and inspiration. It can't. And we're seeing it right now in America as a whole. When you talk about all the money, just one stat I'll give you, all the money that has been spent in the primary elections since Citizens United passed, right? Since they opened like the floodgates.
Okay.
1/3 of that total money has been spent in this primary cycle, just this year.
Wow.
money has had the least amount of, this is the least amount of effect money has had in American politics in its history. So I just want people to know that like they're spending more and more and it's doing less and less. And that's the proof is in Maine, sadly, with, I don't know if it's going to last with Graham Plattner, but the proof is here in New Hampshire. And again, the proof is in New York City,
Right.
with all the people winning. It's
Colorado, New
absolutely,
Jersey,
it's coming. It's coming. The train is
California.
coming.
Awesome. Well, Arya, thank you so much for being so insightful and bringing the
Absolutely.
nuance and moral clarity here today on Out of Bounds. Best of luck with your campaign. Tell people where they can find you and get plugged in.
Thank you so much. Hey, listen, thank you so much for inviting me, Steven. I've been following you since we met, and I love your stuff. And I'm so happy you're on our team here. And we talked a little bit about your long form stuff. Listen, we need long form, bro. A lot of us do short form. We need more long form, and I think you're great. You're a great weapon in that field. So I
Appreciate it. Means a
appreciate
lot.
everything that you're doing. So you can follow me on any social media, Arya for the number NH. My backup is Arya FORNH, so you can't go wrong with either of those.
Yeah, I know
My
you've dealt with
website,
some shadow banning on
yes,
TikTok.
that's
So
why
that's
we
when you
have
know
the
you've made
backup
it.
now. And so my website is also arya4nh.com. It is still a work in progress. Hopefully by tomorrow, this weekend, I'm hoping to have that settled. And yeah, you can pretty much follow me online. I would say go check out our Discord, the NH Talk Discord. If you follow me online, I'm going to post about that. Go join that if you're willing to, if you want to be a part of the community at New Hampshire Talk. We don't have there's no gatekeepers, as long as you're not some Republican plant, like we're cool with you. And I just, the thing I would want people to leave this conversation with is that none of us are free until we're all free. So regardless of whether this conversation is happening in New Hampshire, in Boston, in Minnesota, in Caracas, in Tel Aviv, in Tehran, we have way more in common with the Iranian that is on the streets of Iran right now than anyone in this ruling class, anyone around the world. And the moment you start looking at this as a class war, ultimately, and I think that's what I kind of, again, it's a complicated conversation, but if the world is feeling overwhelming and you look at across overseas, you see people in your, the working class, they're fighting. Sometimes it feels like you just want to give up. Go look outside and go fix the pothole outside of your apartment. That's how I started in politics. I fixed the pothole that was in my apartment complex with some calls and some help, right? Now I want to go change the federal government. That's what this does. And don't feel overwhelmed by it. There are lots of us out there fighting with you. So I appreciate, and people like Steven. So I appreciate you big time.
No, Arya, thank you for your time. And again, best of luck with the campaign.
Of course. Thank you so much.